but I need to offer you a few closing remarks. On behalf of the class of 2023, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who made this day and this accomplishment possible. Our teachers, administrators, custodial staff, friends, parents, mentors, and community. We owe so many people a tremendous debt of gratitude. I apologize in advance. This speech might be a bit of a buzzkill. I was going to talk about how Sigmund Freud can help us understand cliches, but if you're interested in that, talk to me after. I'd love to talk. And how the FACE acronym builds us as bubblers, but we're going to take a different route tonight to the same conclusion. And here it begins. Last night was one of the scariest nights of my life. As some of you may know, I've been dealing with congestion and throat problems that made even giving these speeches perhaps unlikely for the past 2 weeks. Last night, that congestion almost took my life. As I tell this story, I want to make it clear that I'm not just telling it for a pity party or for sympathy. The events and the people last night allow us a window into understanding exactly what I'm trying to describe to you tonight in this speech. Here's the story. At around 11 p.m. last night, while I was sleeping, my airway began becoming completely and totally clogged by mucus in my throat, refusing to even let the tiniest gasp of air in. I stumbled out of my room into the top of my steps, fluttering in and out of consciousness in the hopes of alerting my family who were downstairs, wheezing and gasping for air while getting absolutely nothing. And nothing. My mom heard me first. She ran to the bottom of the steps and screamed. My lips were, according to her, a navy blue color, and my face turning a similar dark and sour shade of blue and purple. At this point, I was completely unconscious. I don't remember my mom and dad's running up to me, screaming or pounding on my back. My brothers, seeing the whole thing, knew immediately to call 911. The first thing I consciously heard was the 911 operator asking for our address. At that point, my retching cough and my body's instinctual attempts at throwing up had cleared my airway enough to regain consciousness and fully realize the danger and the terror I was in. That next 15 seconds of not breathing but being fully aware of what was going on were the scariest 15 seconds of my entire life. Emily Dickinson, one of my favorite poets, has a fantastic poem about death called Because I Could Not Stop for Death, in which she describes how death picked her up in a carriage, carried her back throughout her life before passing away. Using that metaphor in those 15 seconds, I was straining with all my might to keep myself from entering death's carriage, while death was furiously tugging on my arm towards that trip. 911 arrived just a few minutes later, bounding through the door with a mix of determination, confidence, and a reassuring presence that everything was going to be okay. Now, at this point, we can all take a collective deep breath and collective reassurance, because I'm still here giving you this speech right now. I left that hospital at 3:03 a.m. this morning. I brought a nice souvenir with me. Still determined to be here today giving those speeches. Now, though, I want us to go back to the story and think about those actors involved in it and their responses to this crisis. Think back to my mom, whose first instinct upon seeing her son dying was not to freeze, but to fight for my life. Think back to my dad, who went into paramedic mode, pounding on my back, seconds away from starting CPR. Think back to my brothers, who instantly recognized what was going on, saw what still needed to be done, and executed by calling 911. The epitome of the fight or flight response was what happened last night. My family responded with zero hesitation. They took action. They calculated the crisis, took deliberate steps, and refused to become paralyzed by the traumatic experience they were witnessing. They saved my life. When I went to the Carlisle hospital emergency room after 911 left, I noticed the exact same thing amongst the ER nurses and doctors while I laid in that hospital bed. When an unresponsive patient came in, they took calculated and deliberate action amidst the uncertainty and the chaos without becoming paralyzed by the weight of the responsibility of the task they were carrying in their jobs. This instant eternally recurs in our lives. We are presented against our will with circumstances that are difficult, scary, and which challenge the very core of our being. If our response is to merely cower in the shadows, death, both figuratively and even literally in my case, is what awaits. Abraham Lincoln famously uncovered this exact same tension in his Gettysburg Address. He said, quote, "Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war." End quote. The battlefield of our war of life is right before us outside this stadium here today, fellow graduates. The posture we must enter it with, though, is to take sides in the fight and to fight to win, like Lincoln. To take decisive and life-saving action, like my family. To use your experience and knowledge to deliver results, like the ER doctors. And, like a bubbler, to face what's coming with confidence and a willingness to do what it takes, no matter what, no matter the circumstance. Graduates, we stand on the precipice of one of the biggest transitions of our lives, staring into the road before us with a mixture of hope about what may come and apprehension of what we might find on our path. Nonetheless, we must recognize that it is now our turn to act. You might recognize the title of this speech, "Your Move, Chief." It's a quote from the fantastic movie Good Will Hunting, a story of a genius with a broken background that's helped by a miracle psychologist. Will Hunting, the main character, is haunted by his past and as such is afraid of moving forward and deciding what he wants for his life, though he can do anything he wants in the world. His psychologist named Sean, played by Robin Williams, is equally as intelligent but possesses a quality none of us yet do: wisdom. Like I referenced in my salutatorian speech, Sean reminds Will that, much like Marcus Aurelius says, nothing can substitute actually living out the goals that we seek. Sean says to Will, quote, "If I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. But I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling." He goes on, "Do you think I know the first thing about how hard your life has been, how you feel, who you are, because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you?" End quote. No, of course that cannot encapsulate him, and it can't encapsulate us either. Like Will Hunting, we're at a crucial point in our lives. We can accept the invitation to live into what we've been given and to truly invest ourselves in our calling, or we can reject it. That choice has largely been made for us up to this point, and we've been conditioned for better or for worse into the options we've been given, but now our life is wide open. While our actual material freedom might be limited, our personal freedom is immeasurable in scope and incalculable in depth. For many, as existential philosophy can remind us, that freedom is paralyzing, but it does not have to be. Take the lessons of the acronym FACE. Take the understanding of finding the source and also the balance that Connor gave you. Take the different path and the mindset for life that I've offered you. Take the support and the companionship your teachers and friends have given you. Take the love and encouragement your family has bestowed upon you, and make the conscious choice to move forward into the new era of our lives with calculated and deliberate steps, unimpeded by the chaos and the uncertainties of what is to come. Your move, Chief. Thank you, and congratulations.